Hi everyone, grateful to be able to be with you today and share an addict's perspective on what no one would have guessed about me during that time in my life. Super grateful for all the engagement and conversations we've been able to have after Shay's video earlier this week. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. For me, there were two things that no one would have guessed about me. And the first one was that I was in this inner battle with myself between who I had become and who I was. I hated who I was. Everything I did to feed my addiction went against who I was, went against what I believed. I was stealing, I was lying, I was cheating, I was doing all the things addicts do to feed that addiction, to make sure that we don't have to consider a day without drugs. We don't have to consider dealing with life, dealing with those emotions that we are running from, or at least that I was running from. And I despised who I had become. And because of that, the other thing that no one would have guessed about me at that time was every time I got on the freeway to go get drugs, every time, the thought crossed my mind to just spin the wheel. 70, 80 miles an hour, spin the wheel. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. It wasn't in an effort to die. That wasn't the objective. If it did happen, I wouldn't have cared. I could see my family saying it was just an accident, right? It was an accident. They wouldn't have to know that I did it intentionally. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, but that was the justification in my mind. At least if I do die, there's some doubt. They can at least hope that I didn't do it intentionally. But the real reason was because I didn't know how to ask for help any other way. I was too scared. I was too scared to face what I had become and have those conversations with the people that I loved and cared about, or anyone else for that matter. I was terrified at what those conversations would be, of being that person who I had become in those conversations, of accepting that. Because to have those conversations, I would have to tell people what I did on a daily basis. I would have to tell people the lies. I would have to tell people the stealing and the manipulation that was going on. And that wasn't who I was. It was who I had become, but it wasn't who I was. And that was painful. And so I was too scared to do it. And that's why the solution that I considered was creating this massive event in my life and in my family's life so that I could have conversations like that with this bigger thing overhead, so that those things seemed smaller. So those things weren't the focus, and now we were literally talking life and death. And when we were talking life and death in my head, those pieces wouldn't be so big. They could be a conversation we could have, that I could have with them without feeling so much like this addict that I had become, and feeling more like this person that I knew I was, but was scared to acknowledge and talk through. So those are the things that I don't think anyone realized were going on inside of me during that time of life. It was painful, it was hard, and I didn't know how to ask for help. And it wasn't until I started watching my family start to make changes, start to do things a little differently, start to express different sides, different things that they were going through, that I started to consider maybe I can do that too. Maybe there's a shot for me yet. Maybe somewhere that person that I am still exists. That person that I want to be can still happen. And it was because of my family that I started to take those steps, because I watched them take those steps. I watched them start to move towards happiness and different ways of looking at things, different ways of expressing those things for them. So anyway, I hope that helps you. At very least, I hope it helps you understand what's going on inside of one addict's mind as I was dealing with that on a day-to-day basis. Hey, have a great rest of your weekend. Love you all. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye.